Detection Collaborative, a detection dog training trio with Stacy Barnett.
Hi.
Robin Grubel.
Hey there.
And Crystal Wing.
What's up?
With humor and a big dose of theory, our trio talks practical training advice and features interviews with top trainers and scientists.
It's Canine Detection Collaborative.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Canine Detection Collaborative. This is Robin. I'm still lurking in the background on this next episode where Stacy and Crystal continue their interview with Jack and Annissia. So make sure you stay tuned and make sure you share this because there's some really great information out there for everybody who runs a detection dog. So let's beam back in.
So the other part to her question was about incorporating blanks and blinds into your training.
Oh, yeah. Gosh, I forgot about that. That's super
okay.
important.
Yeah.
Blanks and blinds are big.
Oh, and for our non-STAR people, could you explain what those are just in case?
Yeah, we have a lot of people that listen that don't just...
Okay, so a blank is just working a negative. Basically, you have an area that you've designated for your handlers, and they are to go out and work this area, but they're not going to find anything. And so what that does is it creates discomfort, but it brings them beyond their comfort zone again, because as they go along, they're always expecting to find something. So when you don't, they're like, what's up? Why is my dog doing this? Why is my dog just standing there? Well, it's negative. You need to call it. Or the dog will be sniffing novel odors, and the handler will translate that to odor behavior on HR. And then they say, well, my dog was in odor right here. I was like, no, it wasn't. And so they get to read the differences between what the dog is doing in novel odor versus HR odor or target odor. So that's a lot of fun. We're starting to do more blanks now and negatives. And then, so I guess blanks and blinds are important because blinds, when you're going in an area and it could be hot or it might not. Mm-hmm. But those people are going in there not knowing anything about what's there. They don't know where the training aid is, and they've got to work it like a real search. And that brings a lot of people beyond their comfort zone as well, because the only time they're used to that is on a real search. And then so you find that your handlers are training differently, mm-hmm. and they're not training for deployment. If I sit there and I work an open field and it's all pristine and there's some blocks there and I throw a source in the blocks and we work those 3,000 times a year, that's not going to help you. We need to go beyond the comfort zone. So if Annissia wants to expand upon that, I think she came up with a lot of these ideas as well. So,
and actually, are you referring to blinds or double blinds?
We don't really do a lot of double blinds. I don't see where it does not benefit. I think it will benefit. And I think our handlers are pretty good at not pointing their body to the source.
Gotcha.
And giving tight, movements. And they'll tighten up if you see the source and things like that. Our handlers are pretty good at that. But I would do double blinds all day long. And it's something that we probably should do.
Gotcha.
And then Annissia, what were your thoughts?
So I think in terms of blanks, it's really important depending on the dog that you're working on, like how frequent you should be doing them. So like my dog, she's a Malinois, so she's just absolutely crazy. She has to do more blank searches than maybe Fiji does because she is trigger happy. So we have to build up that endurance. If I have to work more blanks than I do hots almost because she's insane. So that's something that I have to put in my routine a lot more than somebody who has a more like methodical dog who is like, I'll search for years and it's just fine. Like where my dog is like, no, mom, there should be something here. So I have to do a whole lot more blank training. So sometimes it's just driving to a random field and getting out of the car and running a complete blank area and then getting back in the car and going home. That's really important for my particular dog. Now, some people can get away with doing them less frequently. It's just not what happens with my dog. In terms of blinds are so important. And it just kind of depends on like where you're at in your training. We do this thing called time blinds. And so basically Jack will set up a scenario where you could have, it's like a test. You'd have 0 to 3 things in that area and you need to find all those 3 things in like depending on how large the area is, it might be 15 minutes, might be 10 minutes, just whatever, depending on how large the area is. And then you just call it. And then once you're done with your time, you're done with your time. And so, and there's distractor odors in there and all those things. But the important thing there is that it really just teaches you to read your dog. That's something that I feel like is not taught enough, is your dog's going to work a particular way. Different breeds are going to work different ways, but everybody is an individual. So reading your dog is so, so important. And I think that blinds are the number one way that you can learn how to read your dog.
I agree with that 100%. And I will also say that blinds are a great way for you not to cue your dog constantly. So if you work known all the time, I don't care if you're with 2 people or by yourself or with 10 people, you will at some point turn towards source. Your body will tighten. You might say something. You'll look at it. You'll bend down. You'll move your arm. You'll slowly grab your toy out of your pocket. Oh, I've done it. Annissia has yelled at me about it.
All the time.
Yeah. So working blinds is fantastic for avoiding all those cues and all those detrimental behaviors to training. So I love blinds. I think they're great. And we're going to continue to do more and more and more of them. Also, negatives is, I think negatives are especially important on land, but they're really, really important on water. For every hot water scenario that I'll do in training, I may do somewhere between 3 and 10 negatives before I put Fiji in a hot zone again. And that might be 5 minutes. It might be 20 minutes, could be 40 minutes, and there could be an hour. And the reason we do that is because in Asheville and in Western North Carolina, Fiji was on the boat anywhere between 2 and 5, 6 hours. And we're not able to get out and put her in a car. We're not able to cool off. You go in the woods, you give her some water, you get back on the boat, you go. There's no big break. So if my dog can't run a 3-hour negative before she gets to hot, then I've not trained her well.
Yeah.
And so we'll do a bunch of negatives before we do hot on water. I think that's super important. I'm very lucky because the lake that's near me has buoys everywhere because they have the regatta thing going on all the time there. So there's buoys all over the place, and it's really great for visual distractions. I can run Fiji by almost anything, and she ignores it. That was very important up in the mountains because those distractions and the debris was everywhere. We did thousands of dollars of damage to our boat, and we've repaired it since. But we did a lot of damage to our boat because we were hitting logs, sticks, concrete, houses. There's refrigerators in the water. I mean, there was everything you could possibly think of. And you're literally, it looks like land in some places, and you're plowing through it. And you realize, man, this is not land.
Wow.
This is water. So I think blanks and blinds on water are super important as well.
So, you're talking about a lot of blanks, which is awesome. But then we were also talking about like the aspects of your team and the type of, how do you get your handlers to kind of have the patience to do all those blanks, like with training them? People love to find odor. It's probably just as exciting for the handler to find odor as it is for the dog, maybe more so sometimes.
Yeah, there's definitely a human dopamine hit when that happens.
Yeah, right?
Gosh, I don't know. I would say that we try to get them to do it as much as we possibly can in certain stages of training. So there's a couple of handlers that aren't ready for that yet. There's kind of still in the imprinting stage or at the teaching a TFR stage. Once we get past that, we'll move into blanks and blinds. There's another handler on a team that's just starting the blinds, and she'll get better and better and better. We're going to make her do it until she aces these time blinds, period, end of story.
Yeah.
But also the blanks. And so to get them to do that on their own, the only thing that we can do is tell them.
Yeah.
And encourage them to understand the power of it.
Yeah.
Not finding anything is just as powerful as finding something, because 90% of your searches, you're not finding anything anyways. So you got to train how you deploy.
Right.
I hate to say it. Fiji and I deploy so much. I don't really train her on negatives a lot on land because she gets so many of them anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these deployments, if I don't find anything, I was like, well, that was a training. That was a training. That was a training. So that's wonderful. And my other handlers, as they progress, will get to that point where they'll be working so many calls, they will have plenty of negative areas to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do I communicate that to them? The only thing I can do is tell them and show them the power of it and hope that they do it on their own.
That's why you have to have a high drive human, right? Who's just...
Yeah.
Speaking of that, I have a question for Annissia. Do you have some techniques or games that help dogs stay motivated through those longer, more challenging training sessions? Because we kind of get those where no matter how much you give them, they still just seem to find it. So, and then they start getting frustrated because they get that timer when they're supposed to find it. And so that's why we put the blanks in there. But do you have some techniques or games that you could share with people? Maybe some tips that help handlers maintain consistency in their training for this?
Yeah, so I think that variable reinforcement schedule is super, super important.
And can you explain that? Because some people may not know what that is.
Yeah, so basically you're mixing up how your reward's given, when your reward's given. So sometimes you're not giving a reward at all. Sometimes you're giving a reward just for nose on. We do a lot of nose on. Like a lot. And even when you like go into the whole live find aspect, sometimes it's like you're literally just putting your victim 20 feet out there and your dog's expecting this huge area to search and their victim's 30 feet away. And so we are fluctuating kind of our training scenarios to where we're not just doing hard problems, hard problems, hard problems, hard problems. You're not just doing long negatives all the time. So it just kind of depends. And it could just be a really long negative. You put them back in the car and then you get them back out and it's a nose on search. So making sure that you're switching things up as much as possible, but still having the bigger picture goal of saying, okay, I know I need to get to an hour of your negative. And so you're not going to just go out and do your first negative going to be an hour. Like you have to, it might be, say your dog has a 20-minute timer where you know that they're going to hit about 20 minutes and then they're going to false or get frustrated, whatever they do at that 20-minute timer. The first time you may call it at 19 minutes. And then the next time it might be nose on. And then the next time you do another negative and you call it at 25 minutes. So you just slowly, it's like a balloon where you're blowing the balloon up, but you have to do it very, very slow. Because if you do it too quickly, the balloon's going to pop. So that's your dog's frustration, right? But if you blow it up really, really slowly, then it will gradually expand and you're not stressing the dog out too much. So we do a lot of nose-on games, a lot of fun games. When you're talking about live find, it might be going back to a runaway. Like just doing something fun as a motivational builder. It could be switching the toy. There's a lot of things that you can do. Jack, I'm sure you have some other games to throw in there.
Well, I think that's a lot of it. You've covered pretty much 99% of it. I also think that rewarding during searches is important. So if I've got a 2-hour search or a 3-hour search, well, I'll give you, for instance, a couple of weeks ago, Fiji and I were working a water deployment. We were out there for about 5 hours and I had literally stopped 3 times or 4 times during the deployment. And what I'll do is I'll tell her to sit or plots or give her a recall command and come to me. And then I reward her for that. We play the tug game and stuff like that. And then let her drink some water and then continue. But the variables, those are super important because she doesn't know when to expect it. She doesn't know if she's going to get rewarded in 5 minutes or 5 hours. And I think the variable reward schedule was really big on keeping the motivation of these dogs up in Western North Carolina because they can work more than 20 or 30 minutes. I mean, they're working hours and hours and hours every day. So to be able to do that is super important. Different games and things, I think it's fun to switch the reward with the person. So I like for Julie or Annissia or one of my other handlers to tug with Fiji. And same with Dahlia, play with a wubba. Dahlia messes up my old shoulders sometimes, but it's still fun. I enjoy it. And plus I like to work Dahlia anyway. So rewards are super important. I think that if you make your dog work for hours at a time and then you don't reward it at all, I mean, you want to make $5 an hour or do you want to be a millionaire? We need to make our dogs millionaires in terms of the paycheck department.
Right.
So we try to do that as much as we can.
Right.
So thinking about the dogs, because they are so driven, is there a certain, when do you know that they need the reinforcement or that, what is your read on your dog?
Fiji will just look at me. She'll turn back and look at me and be like, yeah, I'm done for a little while. I'll say, here, sit, reward. Play with her for a few minutes, sit down for 10, 20 minutes, pet her, talk to the people, let her run around, whatever. And then we go back at it.
Yeah. I'm kind of interested. You've mentioned a couple of times using different rewards, and I'm picturing my own dog who is obsessed with a certain type of ball
Mm-hmm.
to the point where she'd walk on water for this ball. I swear she would. Yeah, but if I were to use a different reward, it would almost be a punisher for her, and she'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
"Okay, that was kind of dumb, but all right, I guess I'll play with that ball." But you're holding out on me. In your training with the dogs, you try to switch up the reinforcers, try to see if you have several that are kind of equal. If you have a dog that has like my dog Prize, she's got like an A+++ reinforcer. And I'm like, yeah, she loves other things.
Mm-hmm.
She'll play with other things. But like if I brought,
Yeah. Have you tried bringing out 2 or 3 of those balls at one time? That could be the varied that we're talking about.
Oh, you mean like several? Oh,
Yeah. So it doesn't just have to be like, because we don't want to punish it, right? But you can switch things up for the dogs. Like, so Dahlia will literally play with anything, but we chose the Kong Wubba. It's funny. She squeaks it and it's like literally a disaster could be going on behind her. And here she is just like it just lights up the room and it's fun. But she'll work for a ball and a string. She'll work for whatever.
Yeah.
It just kind of depends on what I have. And the other thing is that like realistically, what if I forgot that Wubba? And what if I only had that ball in the string? So I do want to incorporate other toys just in case, because that's reality. Sometimes you forget that toy and sometimes you have to make do with what you have. And then the next time that she gets the Wubba, it's even higher value. But the other thing is like mixing it up could also be just bringing 3 of them out at one time. And it's like, oh, it's crazy party. And that could be a jackpot every once in a while. Not saying do that every single time, but if you set that standard way too high, you're never going to be able to like fully uphold that for forever, right? There's going to be times where you have to drop that standard a little bit.
Yeah, no, it has me thinking because like literally, I mean, she'll do like obedience and all that for all these other things like a tug, and she loves a tug. But if she thinks I have this specific type of ball on me, everything else is like dead to her.
Yeah.
But the idea, like she's just like, that's not what I wanted. But I love the idea of having several of those because she's not very specific in terms of like which one. It just has to be a certain type of ball. And that's a cool idea. That's a very cool idea.
Try it.
Try that. I'll try that.
So I have to tell a story. So we're out in the mountains. We're working. We're in Asheville. In 360 degrees, you can turn and there's like a train derailed and there's fire over there. And then you go and you look another direction and there's strainers and all kinds of stuff. In another direction, there's apartments that, are 30 feet high, full of mud, cars on end. They're piled 30, 40 feet high. So basically it looks like a war zone with some fire going on. It's like absolutely ridiculous. And we're standing there talking and all I hear is squeak, squeak, squeak. And that's because Dahlia's got her Wubba behind us. And it just made me laugh. There was several times we were driving in the cars from area to area. And it was like perfect timing. Every 30 seconds, Dahlia would just squeeze that Wubba just a little bit. Squeak. 30 seconds later, squeak. It sounded like a smoke detector with a bad battery.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, I can definitely picture that. So, before we forget, because I kept having this in my brain and then it just kept going away because we'd be talking about other cool stuff. You had talked you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation about kind of specialization with HR dogs. Do you want to get a little bit more into that discussion?
Sure. So we're in the process of doing that. And it's kind of experiment for us. And I think it's going to be super successful. It was Annissia's idea. And I love this idea of, okay, let's be honest with ourselves. If you hadn't had a miss, then you're not working, in my opinion. Every handler at some point is going to have a miss. So bleached white bone, talk about a nemesis. Okay.
Yeah.
Bleached white bone is terrible. So we're going to train dogs to do probably bleached bone, regular dry bone, and buried. And that's going to be a specific dog.
So you're thinking really low odor threshold for kind of those types of dogs. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then we're going to have another dog that will be a wide area dog. That's for the dementia patients that walked away. somebody might have killed themselves in the woods. There could be a murder or something like that. But it's bigger, stronger, full body stuff. So we'll have that. And then we're going to split out water and crime scene. So crime scene is going to be one of its own things because the wide area dog may not necessarily sniff every fiber of carpet in a bedroom that needs to be sniffed, but your spaniel sitting in there will do it. So we're going to split those things off and kind of specialize these dogs into certain areas.
Yeah. Are there certain like qualities that you would be looking for those sorts of dogs? Like I've got in my head, I'm picturing drives and arousal and all that.
Dahlia is a great wide area dog because she has a lot of training in heavy odor and she'll range really far. And so I love Dahlia in wilderness scenarios. Fiji will work wilderness and she does a great job. I mean, we do it all the time. But if I'm going to pick a first dog out on a wilderness problem, it's going to be Dahlia. Fiji will come in next and like say, she'll do fine, but her jam is water. It's so funny. She used to be scared of the boat. She doesn't really like being in the water. But now when she sees that boat on the dock and we're walking towards that boat, she's gone and she is ready to go. And as soon as you turn on the motor and start up, if you're doing 3 miles an hour, she's searching, even if you're not in the search area. So we'll do 25 miles an hour to the search area and then slow down again. And I don't have to tell her a thing. She's searching. She loves water. Annissia and I had talked about bringing in a spaniel to do more detailed work on a crime scene because those dogs tend to really be very methodical in small areas. So that'll be great. And then for the other dogs, for the low threshold odor, I think that we can probably train just about any breed, whether it be a spaniel or a shepherd or a Malinois, whatever it is.
Like, you guys are skipping my favorite breed. Every time you mention breeds, I'm like,
okay, we have labs too.
okay.
Yeah.
Just want to put that out there. I'm feeling a little excited over here.
I know. I apologize.
Hashtag Team Floppy right here. So.
Exactly. So, they're great dogs too. I mean, labs are good wide area dogs, but they're also good detailers. So you can kind of do both with them. But the bleach white bone and the buried stuff, that is so much of a different odor picture than somebody laying on the surface or somebody being in the water. And so if we split that out, I think we're going to have great success.
Here's my question though. That was something that I always dreamt of for Yukon because he is will suck every minuscule amount of every oxygen bit from every inch, right? Mm-hmm. And to get him certified though, you can't just have that for certification. Mm-hmm. So are you going to still like train to the test just for test time to get a certification to then go back to your old bone and like clandestine?
Yeah, and I'll relate that back to law enforcement, kind of an analogy. You go through the academy, you're a police officer, you work for a couple of years as a regular police officer, you're going to take a domestic, you're going to stop a car, you're going to get in a chase, you're going to serve civil papers, you're going to work in the courthouse, you might sit in the jail. And all those are different specialties, but you're doing them all. So you're a jack of all trade, a master of none, but you're pretty good at everything that you're doing. So you want the dog to be pretty good at everything that it's doing, but then we're going to make it a master of something.
Gotcha.
And so me as a police officer, after 4 or 5 years, I might say, I want to be a SWAT. I'm going to go to SWAT team. I'm going to get specialized training there. Or I want to be an interdiction officer. So I'm going to get training in narcotics and interdiction. I want to be a homicide detective. So I'm going to get a lot of training in interviewing and homicide and evidence and all these different kind of things. It's no different than with your dogs. Give them the basics, make sure that they're certified, make sure that they're good at it, make sure that they get their year with us deploying with them, and then let's specialize it. Let's really focus on what this dog can be great at, because that year and that time is going to tell us, this is a good wide dog, this is a good water dog, this is a good detailer, and so on and so forth. So absolutely, they're going to get the basics and then they're going to move on from there.
And so then it's just kind of tuning them back or whatever for their certification, because then you have to recertify after 2 years. So
yeah.
Would you like to see a movement toward specialized certifications, or do you like the way it is now?
I don't like the way it is now. I would absolutely love to see that, because we have a dog right now. It's this little black lab. I imprinted her on land for maybe a week, and then I stuck her on the boat. And watching her changes of behavior on the boat was so cool because she's so animated on the boat and she drops that nose way down to the water and stuff. Why do I want to put her on anything else? She may not be great at land. She may not be great at crime scene, but boy, that girl can work some water. Why not use that? Why not let her specialize in that? So no, I don't like the way the current certifications are. I would love to see a change in that. When that happens, I don't know. But internally, we're definitely going to do it.
Makes a lot of sense.
And, let's talk about dual purpose dogs for a minute as well. I know there are a lot of dual purpose dogs out there that do live and HR, but I think when you start to get into super complicated HR, I won't deploy a dual purpose because, again, jack of all trades, master of none. And now you've entered live into the scenario when you're supposed to be working bleach white bone or detail a crime scene. No, I'm not doing it.
So I don't know why that made me kind of think about some of the scammer type stuff that you talked about.
Yeah, the jack of all trades, master of none, or in that case, the jack of no trades, the jack of the trades, master of none.
There was a lot of that mouthful in it and surrounding.
There was a lot of education that happened through Facebook and some social media. I'm curious, could you help educate some of our listeners on what was happening with scammers, what people could look for? Because I know there were GoFundMes that people were putting money into. And that was rough. I had a couple of friends that donated and I was like, oh, no, you didn't. Because people have such big hearts and they want to help. And so what could people understand that's when they're not legit? How do you know?
So if you're walking out there and you're a family member or something and you see a handler that's in full military kit with a 40-pound flak jacket on, goggles and everything else, and they got that dog on a 30-foot long line with this huge harness and they're trying to work a strainer, that's a problem because as a handler right away that this person doesn't understand that strainer is going to catch and choke their dog to death.
Okay, explain to people what a strainer is.
So a strainer is just a bunch of debris that's really packed tight and it creates this barrier almost like a dam. And so when the dogs are searching this, they're actually so tight sometimes that the dogs will be able to climb them. And it could be trees, it could be steel poles, it could be rocks, dirt. There might be a car in it. There might be a body in it. So when you're searching these strainers and you see that and you know that these strainers are super dangerous, but you're just adding to the danger for your dog by doing it on a long line and a harness like that, there's times for harnesses. Working a strainer in a disaster area, in my opinion, is not one of them.
They were on lead, like trying to do it on a long line?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And they were doing it on 30-foot long lines with all kinds of gear on their dogs. Some of them had goggles on, some of them had booties on with the long line and the harness. It was crazy. Like, it was super dangerous for the dogs and it was super dangerous for the handlers. And you can spot that kind of a handler a mile away. And we didn't see a lot of it because we were leaving as it really got bad. We saw some of it, not a ton. But as we left, we saw more and more and more and more. And some of these teams were legit search and rescue teams who just couldn't control themselves and self-deployed anyway. And you can tell they didn't have the training because they're asking certain questions about why is my dog doing this in odor? Or you can see them posted on Facebook and they're videoing their dog as they walk behind it. Or you see them on top of a strainer or working a collapsed structure with no helmet, no boots, and almost a pair of shorts. It was crazy, the stuff that you would see. So you can spot that a mile away. It was so bad that there was a certain handler out there, I won't mention who it is, it's not my place, but this person actually claimed that he found the mother of a family when he hadn't. And those family members were devastated by that. Mm-hmm. They actually posted on Facebook about it. Look out for this person.
Yeah.
This person faked us out.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. And we saw a lot of that, unfortunately.
And so no one's going to be asking GoFundMes, right? That's not something that should be happening.
No. Annissia and I had a conversation when we were in the car. And the conversation was, do we start a fundraiser? And the answer was, absolutely not. Because we're out there supposed to be doing a job. We shouldn't be worrying about money right now. We should be worrying about where we find these victims. We shouldn't be trying to make a buck off the backs of victims because that's ridiculous. And to do that, just in my eyes and my opinion and Annissia's as well, is, it's just wrong.
Yeah.
Why would you start fundraising during the middle of a disaster like that? Let the families just be professional for these families. Do the right thing. Do your job the way you're supposed to. Worry about money later. I will say, we didn't ask for a dime, but we got a lot of money from different donors because they wanted to, not because we asked them.
Right.
And it did help us. It helped us repair several $1,000s of damage on the boat. But to ask for that during the middle of a disaster like that, in my eyes, that's a huge red flag on any team or any handler that does that. I just don't like it.
If you're a family member and you're in those situations, would you recommend, what would you tell them to look for to know if someone is legit and being able to help?
Look for the way they're dressed. If they're dressed like what I talked about earlier in a flak jacket and full military gear, like you're going to war, it's probably somebody that wants to look cool. If they're dressed too little, if they don't have the appropriate PPE, then they don't realize what they're in and they're in over their heads. So those are really good things to look for. Look for people working in a harness and a long line on a strainer.
Should they ask for certifications or should they ask for, because I think that's something that people just don't know. They don't know that they should be deployed through law enforcement I was just trying to think, if I was a family member, I'm devastated trying to find my family, it'd be hard to know what to do.
Yeah. And these people don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And these poor people during this situation, they might not even have heard about a cadaver dog ever in their lifetime until they needed it. And so they can't recognize what's legitimate and what's not.
Right.
But we sure did. And we were able to see on Facebook, and we were able to actually quash a couple of those and get them out of there. And there's different ways that you can get called to these. You got to be prepared, got to have the proper PPE. You need a certification. You need the practice and the training, especially distractions. So when you have that, then you're on the list for emergency management. So North Carolina Emergency Management called us after the storm. We were the very first team out. Fiji and Daya, as soon as they touched the ground, it was like they're the first dogs out in this disaster, period, end of story for HR. We were there for a couple of days, probably, I think, 3 or 4 days. And Annissia might be able to remind me, but kind of stood there and looked around. And I was like, I hate to say it, we're screwed. We need more dogs. And so I called my contact over at Emergency Management. I said, Ryan, we need dogs and we need them now. And he's like, how many you need? I said, 40. He's like, what? I said, we need probably at least 40. He's like, you're kidding. I said, absolutely not. We are in this huge disaster, and there is absolutely no way we can cover these areas by ourselves. Even with 10 dogs, it's not going to happen. We need a ton. And so he started working it. And so what he did is I'm sure that he made calls to FEMA. I know because FEMA dogs started coming after that. And it was interesting because they didn't work typically like they would in the past, where they're attached to a team. They all kind of came as a group, and then they went out to the areas that they were needed. You might be working with Jersey one day, California one the next, VA one the next. You don't know where you're going. I thought it was kind of a cool way to do it. But also, we did it through EMAC. There was several EMAC requests that came out or that we put out for different dogs. And we had a team from Florida come out because of the EMAC requests. And they're great dogs. They're great handlers. So
explain to us what EMAC is.
I always forget the term, what it actually, the acronym means, but that's a compact between states that allows for one state to call a handler or a resource to another. And it's not just for canines. It could be for equipment, could be for helicopters, could be for different swift water teams, things like that. So that's kind of how that works. I'm not an expert in EMAC by any means, so I'm just giving you the basics.
That's all we need.
Yeah.
Because we have such a diverse listenership, so that's why I always ask.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, with our listeners, we've got a lot of people that do like sport detection.
Mm-hmm.
I teach nose work full time, that kind of thing. We also have, we've got a lot of search and rescue. We've got people that do different types of other kinds of detection and that sort of thing. And we have worldwide listenership. So
awesome.
I was curious, Annissia, could you talk a little bit about Puddles? Speaking of the diversity of all the things we have.
This is one of my favorite stories.
So Puddles is a water leak detection dog. So she finds commercial and residential water leaks through the detection of chlorine. And let me just say it was the hardest thing I've ever done, and I don't want to ever do it again, even though I love the dog. So
You got paid.
yep, but it was not worth it. I'm serious. It's difficult. So at the time, our local water company contacted me and was like, hey, we need a dog to detect water leaks. Do you think you can do this? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm sure I could, but I need to think about it, and I need to research, and I need to find the right dog and all the things. At the time, there was one other dog in the United States doing this. And I think there's other dogs in like Australia or maybe like England, somewhere in the UK does water leak detection. But at the time that I started Puddles training and finished Puddles training, there was only one other dog in the United States doing this. And I didn't know, like, there wasn't a whole lot of information on it. There was nothing online. All the videos that I saw were of the dog finding a jar of chlorine. But I very quickly learned, like, that's not the way that, like, it's really feasible. Like, that doesn't work, right? Chlorine actually, because it's a gas, it dissipates very quickly. And so you're training a dog on basically tap water, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like well water does not work. It has to be chlorinated water from the treatment plant. And that comes in all various degrees of concentrations. And so that water, actually, the chlorine comes out of that water within less than 5 minutes. So
wow.
If that water is not continuously resurfacing, in terms of the gas is not continuously resurfacing, like that's what the dog's finding. And if you just put a jar of like chlorinated tap water out, the chlorine content in that water is pretty much gone after 5 minutes. So like I very quickly learned like that was not going to work. So I basically made all these like test things for like test sites for the dog. So the dog wouldn't remember where the leak was. And I had to like change it all the time. And it was an adventure. I don't recommend it. It was not worth it, but it was so cool to see it click and to see it actually pay off. The dog is still so the water company purchased the dog from me. I found a wonderful lab. And I know the lab, Stacy.
There you go.
Great noses, man. Great noses.
She's a chocolate lab. So everybody's like, oh, get a black lab. And I found a chocolate lab out of all things. She was great. And she finds several leaks a month still. So wow. Yeah, it's insane. I didn't really think and it's cool because she can determine like the highest like point of concentration. I mean, just like any dog can, right? So there's a huge puddle, like she'll actually go to where it is coming up from. But also she will find leaks that are not surfacing. So not every water leak will actually surface.
I have personal firsthand knowledge of this around my house. So
they don't always surface.
No, they don't. I had a water leak. It came from between the road and my house, broke.
Yep.
The way we found it was all of a sudden the water gauge was 20,000 gallons or something. And there was never any water in the basement, nothing. It was just Yep.
You could have saved my dad a lot of money too.
First-hand knowledge there. Luckily, I had line protection and I didn't pay for it.
Yeah. And some people don't even know where their lines are. So that's the hardest part I would say about all of this is because when you pull up to a house. So when I sold the dog, thankfully they're local, so I can train with them at any point and I can troubleshoot anything because the handler is not a dog trainer. Like he works for the water company. So I had to train him to be a handler, which was a task in and of itself to full-time handle this dog. But the hardest part for us was like people didn't really realize where their water lines were. And it's like, well, I couldn't tell you where mine were. So it's just a little difficult in that aspect.
Yeah, you could have saved my dad a ton. He had to dig up his entire front field trying to find the water line. And he started down low and then had to work his way back up. And it was a lot of field.
It's horrible. Yeah. So the dog definitely helps. She's a tool in the toolbox. She's not 100%, but she has found so many leaks. It's really cool to see what these dogs can do.
Well, and the kicker was it was a natural spring.
Wouldn't have helped anyway, right?
No.
Yeah, would not have helped. No chlorine.
No, it would have helped because it had been like, no, it's not a water leak. It's a.
Oh,
Yep,
no,
and we have
okay.
done several of those. We have done several of those where she'll just bypass it and they're like, but there's water coming up. And I'm like, but there are such things as natural springs. Like,
Yeah.
if there's no chlorine in this puddle, then, she'll find a non-surfacing leak, even though you have water surfacing over here from a spring. So it's really cool to see.
I had city water, so it definitely would have worked.
Yeah.
And what kind of dog was Puddles? That was the chocolate lab?
She's a chocolate lab.
Okay. So what do you think about the different colors of labs? Is there anything in your brain that kind of makes you go one over another?
I personally like black labs. It's just my preference. I feel like chocolates are like wonky and fun and goofy, and
They have a reputation, absolutely.
and even not just their reputation, like the ones that I train, I mainly do pet obedience. So I see like the goofy side. My black labs like are serious and they really want to learn and they're fun still.
And yellow is happy, right? Yellow is happy.
Yeah, yellow's happy. They're my service dogs. They're my therapy dogs. Like they're just happy to see everybody and do everything. And then like the blacks, they really want to work and they want to accomplish something. And then the chocolates are just silly.
That's why I asked, because I feel the same way. So I was like, the silly wonky one is the one that ended up being the great water dog.
Yep.
Didn't mean to put you on this spot again.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, it's fine.
So since we're talking dogs and different, like kind of the qualities and that sort of thing. So kind of circling back to our topic, right? We're talking about search and rescue canines. And we had talked a little bit about genetics and drive and that sort of thing. A lot of times, you get folks who want to do search and rescue and they're kind of like, well, let me go to the local shelter and just, this one's kind of cute to try to find their search and rescue dog. Like, what words of advice would you give them? Or are you're thinking like, just go purpose bred, or or if you're going to go with a rescue, do you have certain words of advice for them?
I personally think it depends on the handler and their skill set, because if you have a very strong handler, you can take not any dog, but you can take a dog that may not be able to go necessarily like with a green handler. So I think number one, it depends on your handler. But if you're talking about somebody who's just getting started in search and rescue, start with finding a local team and training with them before you find a dog. Because I think that's so important get that training in, see what you like and what you're willing to deal with at home and what kind of lifestyle you want for that dog to have when they're not working. Like what can you deal with? What's your breed, right? I personally prefer a purpose bred dog. My older Malinois, who is 9, my lifeline dog, I'm her 4th home, and I didn't start her until 3. And she's great. She's a phenomenal dog, but she's crazy. And she's the one who got me into Malinois. She was my first Malinois. But personally, like, I don't want to subject myself to that again. So I am going to go purpose bred from here on out. I really like raising puppies because I like to have kind of the ability to shape their entire life. And genetics are super, super important to me. I want a super social dog, even though Malinois aren't necessarily known to be super social. That's what I want. So I pick the social Malinois that I can that also have the phenomenal work ethic. But that's not saying that you can't pull a dog out of a shelter and make it a search dog. But it's not every single dog. And it also heavily depends on the skill set of the person training the dog.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially. And you got to find the right mix with the breed. So if the handler, you can't have too much of a dog for a handler, but you can't have too little. So you got to find that good match for whatever that handler's ability is. Sometimes that's really easy. Sometimes it's really hard.
Yeah, definitely. I know the dog I have, I didn't get her for search and rescue, but she was actually bred for it. So I kind of it was a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got lucky.
So we're actually getting ready to get to Malinois puppies. And
Ooh.
Oh yeah, we'll have them in December. And so we're going to start training them.
Nice.
Well, environmentals first, and then we'll move on from there.
Do you look for SAR lines, or do you try to only go to SAR breeders, or do you what kind of lines do you go with?
So our puppies are coming from IGP lines.
Okay.
So they have national champions in that line. They're actually related to my current dog, Dahlia. So my number one thing is the on-off switch. I want to be able to live with the dog.
Yeah.
If Fiji has no off switch.
Yeah. So I think that Jack had mentioned earlier, like about my, like, I'm really big into lifestyle. I'm not super, like, yes, I'm a pet trainer. And so like obedience is there, right? But that's not important to me. What's important to me is like, can we live together in harmony? And like, can we have a wonderful relationship, right? So that also extends to my working dogs. I want a dog that like with my current dog, it's so abnormal, but I could literally just sit in bed with her all day and she's like, cool, mom, let's go. But if I need her to run a 3-hour problem, she's like, got it, whatever you need me to do. And so I really like that. So I personally like IGP, and Fiji's from IGP lines as well, because you have different aspects in there. You have your obedience, you have your tracking, you have, your protection, but that's just mainly like drive and like confidence. And so I personally like the IGP lines because it kind of has a little bit of everything. Our current dogs that we're getting puppies, or current puppies that we're going to be getting, genetically, they're supposed to be super social. So we'll see how they kind of turn out. You never know. It's kind of up in the air when you get a puppy. That's the issue with raising a puppy. You don't really know what you're going to get. But I am a dog trainer, so I like to influence as much as possible because I'm going to have a greater outcome than somebody else who just doesn't really know what they're doing. They kind of get a puppy. But that's why we advise people to join your team first before getting the dog, so you can raise them exactly how you want to raise them. Or if you decide to go to the shelter and get a dog, that's fine too.
I would just like to let it be known that I'm probably going to get yelled at a lot in the next 6 months because it's going to be mandatory that I do certain things a certain way. I know they're coming.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, with the puppies.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just probably need to tell them to be flexible and open-minded. And, if you do that and just not necessarily her way or the highway, I think it'll be fine. So just
people get excited about puppies and what do you do? And they get so overwhelmed when they get a puppy. And so what advice would you have? Like maybe what would you tell them to instill or what's your like, this is my jam. This is why I need to get in there right away.
So let them be a puppy.
Yes, thank you.
Let them be a puppy. Have fun with your dog. Like that's so important. And your first 6 months should be environmentals. It should be socialization. It should be relationship. Those are so important things, such important things. You can imprint your dog later. All those things can happen later. And actually, I mean, if you imprint them too early, say they're going through a fear stage, I mean, you can mess your dog up. So like focus on the fun stuff, get through teething, get through all of that stuff, but take your dog everywhere. Let them see everything. Let them be around the environment, but not necessarily like doing something. Teach them to not do things, but build drive. Like it's all about doing a little bit of everything. But the most important thing is that relationship and having fun with your dog when they're young.
Yeah, I love it. Robin in the comments, all caps, preach.
She's jumping up and down like we can't see her right now, but we
No, you can though,
Do you see why she's a great addition to the team? Because she has that knowledge and it's wonderful. I love it.
Yeah, I think we often want to push too hard, too fast. And when you said socialization, will you add one more to that? And what do you mean by socialization?
So I want to create neutrality with my dogs. I want them to see all the things and not necessarily like feel any sort of way about it. I don't want them to be excited to see a person or scared to see a person. I just want them to be like, oh, it's like a tree in the environment. Like it's just there, So for me, it's really just about getting them used to seeing everything, but it doesn't need to be a big deal, right?
So it's kind of like when you have big hunks of meat rotting in a field.
Exactly.
It takes us right back to the beginning. Look at that.
Exactly. There's a theme here.
Full circle.
I'm thinking about like the people driving by. There's this stinky field that we drive by for summer. It just reeks.
It's so bad.
You gotta roll up your window. It's like driving through Amarillo, Texas, right? You just shut off all your vents. And
one of my employees, he's a hunter and he does a lot of fishing. And I'm like, all of your scraps, just dump them in a pile. And he's like, really? So he will just drive his truck out there and just put them in a pile. But it's cool because like you can even see what the live fine dogs are going to do. And I think that in terms of live fine, people don't work distractions enough. Like I don't remember really ever seeing anybody work distractions in life. But what I have seen when I've been an evaluator for some tests, I see if there's a dead deer in that area, these dogs are going to roll in it. They're going to, because people don't practice. Right. They don't train that, right? Because like, oh, like they're not going to give their TFR on that. So it doesn't matter. But like, what are they going to, what if your victim is right next to that deer and that they're trying to roll in? Like, are they going to choose rolling? So I think that distractions are super, super important, but not just for HR dogs. Like you got to get that in with your lifeline dogs too. And we do that here.
100%. I mean, I've got a really cool picture of Prize running like almost over the top of a deer carcass when she's doing air scent, and she don't know.
I have a video of Radish doing a somersault over a raccoon carcass and then TFR on the source that was a foot away from it. So
that's so cool.
It was like best of both worlds for her. I'm like, no. So we worked on that.
Yeah.
It was not ideal.
Okay. Yeah.
It was not ideal, but she did her job, but just a little flare before.
Flare.
It's really true though. Cause I mean, when I'm training, I'm always noticing like, we flushed a turkey, we flushed a, there were, 2 baby deer, a flock of geese, I recalled her away from a pack of coyotes, like stuff like that. And it goes in my training log. But when I haven't necessarily, and I do notate if there's like dead things or stuff like that, but it's a really, really good point. And I don't think we necessarily pay that as much attention to that, maybe partly because, half the time the dog's not even, we can't even see them. So part of it, but.
We are at the end, friends. So what that means is we always like to ask for takeaways. And so Stacy and I will start to give you both some time to think about it. But what do you want listeners to think, remember, feel, call to action, whatever it is that you want to share as your final thoughts? And Stacy, do you want to go first? You want me to go?
You go, honestly, because I'm sitting here going, what are going to be my final?
If only you knew we were going to do this.
I know. I'm like, exactly. If I only knew like 128 episodes or whatever, that I figured it out by now.
I was still kind of laughing when Jack said, I think I'm describing a dog. When you said that you were, I mean, really, it's the human and the dog need to have the right temperament, the dedication, the attitude, the flexibility to be smart, have the brains for this. And the open-mindedness, I think, is both dog and human as well. And so I thought that was such a great summary of what it takes to do this job for the dog and the human. So that was one of my takeaways that kind of made me go, yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah. My takeaway is actually, going back to the blanks, right? And how important they are. And I think a lot of times we don't necessarily train those as much as we should. On the sports side, when I train on the sports side, yeah, we absolutely do that. I don't personally see that as much on the search and rescue side, actually, from a training perspective and what people do. And actually training blanks from a search and rescue perspective, even though, you're deploying mostly on blanks. But on the sports side, I actually see more of it, which is actually an interesting observation. So I know for me, that's actually a very big takeaway to make sure that I'm incorporating that more into my training plans. So, well, thank you guys for that.
Who wants to do it?
Well, okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I would say 2 things. Know your limitations and know when to stop. And I'll tell you a quick story. Your limitations in terms of, are you physically able to do the job? Is your dog physically able to do the job? Can you do it mentally? And can your dog? And has your dog been trained on these distractions and everything else? Because even though I know a lot of great HR dogs in the country and different places, many of those may not have been able to be successful at all where we were in Asheville and the different places in Western North Carolina. So know your limitations. Know if you can physically climb that strainer or go into that collapsed structure or walk through 18 inches of mud for miles, because you're going to get tired. And if you get too tired, you're just going to be part of the problem. So definitely know your limitations. And if it's okay to say you can't do it, I put a post up on Facebook during this whole deployment. I said, if you can't do these things, don't come. But if you can, come the right way. And so it got a lot of hits, and there were several people who responded to it. And they literally said, I would love to, I want to so bad, but I can't. And I admire that. Like, I say to those people, thank you for understanding your limitations and knowing that this is more about the citizens and the victims than our ego. So I really loved those types of responses. The other thing is I'll say, know when to stop. And this was a big lesson for me during this deployment, because after I'd say it was about 10 days, Annissia and I had a conversation with Athena and we're like, maybe we should just go home tomorrow. Well, then it just so happens I have access to all the requests. So I can see everything that's coming through because of my job. So I saw one pop up. I was like, we got to take that. So I was like, we'll take it. And so the next day we're going to another county, Madison County. And during that part, we were working rapids. And so we were in the river and we were being taken to different little islands and strainers and stuff to search them. And Fiji fell off a rock face and she was limping after I found her. And I said, we're done. We're done. By the time they got us back to shore, thank God she wasn't limping anymore. So she wasn't hurt bad. But I knew right then I should have listened to what Annissia told me the day before, which was we should stop while we're ahead. So I will admit that I made the mistake of not realizing when I should stop. And so I would suggest to handlers, know when to stop. Know that that threshold is when you go from being part of the solution to part of the problem. And I think I got right there. And so that's when I stopped. I was walking down the railroad tracks. I was tired. I sat with my dog. I hugged her for 5 minutes. I texted Annissia. I said, please come get me. We're done. We're done. That was it. We went home.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank
All right,
you.
Annissia, that's a fun one to follow.
I know. How do I beat that, right?
I told him to go first.
I'm glad I went earlier.
I know. There's no topping that. I think for me, my angle about the whole experience is a little bit different. I'm really young, more inexperienced than most people who have been in the field. So I feel like for me, it's stepping out of my comfort zone. I don't like attention. So even this, I'm just like, so if you notice, like when Jack's complimenting me, I'm over here kind of like very straight faced because I cannot stand it. And I have really bad imposter syndrome. And so I think that this experience for me in general is kind of proving to myself that like, hey, I can be out there and I can do this and I'm helping people. And that's really kind of what we got into it to do. And at the end of the day, like even an experience like this being on a podcast or the interviews that we do it's just a lot, but it's at the end of the day, helping other handlers in the future. And that's what I have to think about. That is so important. If they can learn from my mistakes and if they can grow and then they can see me fail or whatever it is, just to help somebody else in the future, that's super important. And just really step out of your comfort zone. And in an experience like that, it's really about shutting your mouth and just doing the job at hand. And we always say train like you deploy, but realistically, like one cannot train for the experiences that we had. So just do your best. But my takeaway from the entire experience, not just the podcast, is definitely like just stepping outside of your comfort zone and doing your best to be better.
Very nice. I love that. And you're going to get a lot of love on our Facebook, just so you know. So if you don't like that love, then
What's going to end up happening is I'll tell her you're getting a lot of love. And she's like, I'm not going to read it.
Yeah. I don't read any of the articles that I did or anything. I'm just not about it.
She doesn't watch the art. She doesn't watch the interview. She doesn't read the article.
And that's okay because it's whatever's best for your mental health.
Yep.
Yeah.
But just know that people are out there appreciating the time that you've given. And we really appreciate the time that both of you have given. And
thank you.
So I think we can say that and speak for all of our listeners because this was a fantastic experience for me. And it always gets me motivated. And as Robin always says, hey, friends, now it's time to go train.
Exactly.
Canine Detection Collaborative.
We appreciate the time you spend with us. If you liked this episode, not only should you follow us so you don't miss the next one, but please also rate and review us in your favorite podcast app. For info on collaborating with us, go to K9DetectionCollaborative.com. That's K9DetectionCollaborative.com, where you can find our socials and pick up our latest monthly freebie. Join us again to talk training in the next episode.